I'm Caleb, I'm an alcoholic. And certainly 14 years ago, no one would say anything like that about me. That's a miracle, I guess. Yeah, a lot of memories coming back to me, you kind of reflect. I woke up very alcoholic this morning, as I do, as my wife will happily confirm. I woke up this morning, I looked in the mirror, and I had a swollen eye. And I'm kind of looking in the mirror at this swollen eye and this tooth missing in the front because I just had this implant and stitches and stuff. I'm thinking, I look like I just arrived. You know what I mean? And my immediate thing was, I said to Natalie, I'm not going. I'm going to cancel. She's like, you're so self-obsessed, you're not going to go and share just because you got it. And I was like, well, yeah, But I think Keith said to me once, one of the most spiritual things you can do is be where you say you're going to be when you say you're going to be there, and so I'm here. Kind of as I've been sitting here and going through the morning, just thinking back, a lot has happened, over 14 years. But to get to the beginning, how it started, I guess a lot of things got reinforced in me and what I can only see in hindsight as an alcoholic from a very young age. I don't believe we get this illness. I believe we have it. We're born with it, and I can certainly see in my childhood there was something wrong with me from the beginning. And I learned ways to cope with life that I guess you would call maladaptive. Long before I took alcohol or drugs, I learned to lie. I learned to manipulate. I learned to pretend to be things that I'm not so that I could fit in, so that I could be part of. And everything kind of became a means to an end. If you ask me, do you think you have defects of character? I would say, no, I have skills, because I developed skills and that was a huge part of me before I used, And those things, I guess, they worked to a degree, but never really made me comfortable in my own skin. And that only began when I found alcohol and drugs. And I kind of one of my first vivid memories. I mean, I drank and I drank a lot, and I have drunk alcoholically, but I was mostly into other substances. And kind of the thing that sticks out for me was, I don't know how old I was, but I was suffering from insomnia, I think. I don't know. And my mom spoke to her doctor, and she had these tablets. And so she gave me a half of this pill and said, you need to take this pill and then you need to go to bed and you'll sleep, And I remember taking that half of that tablet, and the most wonderful thing just happened, And I remember vividly sitting, watching TV, and what I was watching was so much more interesting, and the Coke in my hand tasted so much better, and I fought it, If you want to know if you're an addict or an alcoholic, you take a sleeping tablet and you try and stay awake. Normal people don't do that, I do that because I like the feeling. I like the effect produced by alcohol and drugs, and from then already, that found me searching my parents' medicine cabinets is what I would do, and I would just take anything. I had no understanding of different medications at that point, and I had no idea how dangerous what I was doing was. I didn't think about things like that, but I would find a box of pills, and if it sounded relatively interesting, I would take 10 and see what happens. That's kind of how I was even as a kid, and I don't know what I took. Probably blood pressure pills, diabetes tablets. I have no idea. One recollection I always share about, just to give you an idea of the insanity, was I found a box that said laxative on it, and so I related the word lax with relax, and I proceeded to take 10 of those. I think it was Valois or something, and I was peeing blue for a couple of days, and things relaxed a lot. But that was it, and I know for some people the progression is a gradual process, and it can take many years. But for me, I was guns blazing, and very soon I was experimenting with different drugs, and I really felt like I had finally found something in life that I could really be part of and passionate about, and I found myself surrounded by friends who did the same stuff. you know, and I wanted to be a part of that kind of lifestyle, and I liked it in the beginning. It was good. And I fought for many years to get back to that time, you know. Very quickly living that way, what happened was, in my family, obviously, relationships started to deteriorate. I started to live a secretive lifestyle. I stole from my parents. I did all that stuff that we do. And everything for me was about going out and getting high with my friends. That was it. That was all I wanted to do. I had no interest in anything else. I dropped out of school so that I could grow my hair. That was really my reason. It's kind of how disconnected I was from reality in life. And that's what I did for quite a while. My parents, unfortunately, were those kinds of parents who find any substance, shit themselves, and send you to rehab, you know. So long before I thought I had a problem or even vaguely knew what addiction was or any of that kind of stuff, I found myself at about 15 or 16 in some little, you know, psych center at the time. I grew up in Clarksdorp, by the way, so there wasn't really much else to do there other than get high. So I found myself very, very soon in a place like that, and I actually even enjoyed that experience because I remember them wheeling out medication. I'd take the medication, I'd fight the medication, I'd play pool, I'd be high, I'd eat, I'd sleep, they'd bring more medication, and I'd kind of like just do that for 2 weeks and come out, and everyone thought I'd be fine again, you know, which obviously I wasn't. So that began a really long journey that I won't bore you with of psychologists and psychiatrists and doctors and psych wards and, you know, different methods and ways that my family tried to help me. I mean, sure, you know, I started to realize things were getting bad when I was going to pharmacies and I would be trying to buy some codeine or some, you know, slimming tablets or whatever had some kind of effect, and I would notice my photograph on the counter behind the till, and people stopped selling to me, and so gradually, you know, those effects began to happen, and I started doing rehabs. I went to a pseudo 12-step kind of rehab when I was, I think, 16 then in Joburg, and that was my first time I went to meetings, and you know, I didn't really know what was happening at the time there, but even there, I kind of thought some magic was going to happen. People went around the room, they introduced themselves as addicts, as alcoholics, and I thought, well, okay, so you do that and something's going to happen, you know. People would stand up at the end and hold hands and chant, which was weird. But what I noticed was everybody would hug each other hello, and I kind of liked that vibe, but I got to be honest, when I heard people share, even with years of whatever kind of sobriety they had, they weren't really different from me, you know, was what I picked up. They were miserable. They were kind of like fighting through one day at a time. I heard words like steadfast, hardcore perseverance and stuff. And to me, I'm thinking, well, it's kind of like that out there. What I need to sit here and be miserable for, I can be miserable out there. So I didn't really get much out of my first exposure to these meetings or the people that were in them at the time. So that continued, and like I said, through that, my mom, bless her, tried everything to get me better. I was carted from one place to the next. I've been to the work in the fields rehabs. I've been to the Praise Jesus rehabs. I've been to the, you know, psych rehabs. Let's get as much chemicals as we can to get you to behave yourself rehabs. I've been to the let's nurture your inner child and your wounded soul rehabs, and draw pictures of my heart and everything. Like, I've been there. And another one that kind of stands out to me, because like the only time I really understood vaguely what was going on was when I read the doctor's opinion, you know, and the doctor's opinion talks about this allergy, talks about a physical craving and a mental obsession and compulsion. And I guess, like most people, I reached points where I thought my using was a problem and I should stop for a while at least. But I found I couldn't, you know, and that obsession and compulsion for me was evident in so many ways. And so, like, one experience, my family found this doctor in Tel Aviv who had started this new wonder drug called Revia, which became naltrexone, and there were these amazing high success rates all over the place, and it wasn't often in South Africa at the time, so they wrote this doctor, and my mom's appealing to him. He said, like, he trains people to give the treatment, but he doesn't really treat people anymore, but he was so moved by my mom's letter that they flew us up there. And so I went up to Tel Aviv, and I remember, I took this tablet and I went into like a rapid withdrawal, and they put me out for a day or two. I came out of there, and physically I was okay, and my receptors were blocked, and so, if you use the drug, it's not going to work, so there's kind of like the miracle and blah, blah, blah. But I remember just even from day one, that obsession and compulsion was there all day, every day. Didn't matter whether I was blocked, whether you had some drug in me that would stop it from working, or it's like I was desperate to use. And like I always did, I kind of made my family hopeful, and I looked better, and I was eating again, and all the rest of it, but I was just waiting, like I always was, for that minute, that 5 minutes alone that I could get to use and test this thing out, because it was the first thing I needed to do, find out, So once I got back into the country and I got a little bit of freedom, I went and I used opiates, and they didn't work. And there I found myself in a really horrific position of I'm desperate to use, and when I use it doesn't work. So I did what any addict would do. I used different substances, and other substances that would work, but they just didn't really cut it for me, and so I stopped taking the tablets. And cut a long story short, the one morning when I was using again, my mom was suspicious, and so she watched me take the tablet and made me take the tablet, and then I had to stick around with her for a while until it kicked in, and that was one of the worst experiences of my life, because my receptors got blocked. I went into a rapid withdrawal, and I couldn't tell anybody, and I found myself on the bathroom floor of a local hospital, hotel, just convulsing and going through like what I can't even describe what those next 2 days were like while that tablet was still in my system, and I had to keep that a secret because I couldn't let people know that I was using, and I guess it's safe to say this isn't normal behavior. Normal people don't do shit like that, but that's kind of how it was for me already in my teens. I was doing stuff like that, and I needed to use, I needed something to change the way that I felt, because I was not comfortable in my own skin, ever. Didn't matter how long you got substances out of my system, inevitably I would find myself back. And another example that I just always share about, just is kind of who I am, that I know I do in groups a lot, so some of you probably heard it before, but I have this vivid recollection of being clean for a period. I'd gone somewhere, and for whatever reason, I wasn't even on medication at this place, and I came out and I was clean, properly clean, for a couple of weeks, And at first, I always, I feel better, I look better, and I get excited about, wearing proper clothes again, because I sell all my shit all the time. So then my parents refurnish me with clothes, and then I'm looking better, and then I'm going out there and I'm sounding great, and I'm going to run empires. But gradually, that restlessness, irritability, discontent would settle in. And over a period of time, it would wear me down. That void would just open up. And I remember sitting at the dinner table with my whole family, listening to them do normal. And normal was, everyone's chattering about things that they're doing in their lives that normal people talk about, my one cousin was qualifying, and so they were very excited about that. Somebody was getting married. They were talking about how the wedding's going to be and blah, blah, blah. And I remember sitting there looking at these people like they were strangers, and just not feeling connected to, not understanding what the excitement was about this nonsense they saw, and just feeling like the outsider looking in, those cliches, those things we say, like I identify with. And that little voice in the back of my head then starts, if I just use something just today, everything will get normal again, I'll feel okay, and we'll get through, and tomorrow I'll stop, and I always have that plan, that like at some point, I'll sort it out again, but for now, I need to take the edge off. And like it says in the doctor's opinion, that sense of ease and comfort that comes at once by taking a few drinks. I'd use, and I'd be home, and everything would be okay. I'd feel normal again. I could sit at the dinner table when I've got the right drug in me, and I can listen to my grandfather talk about the good old days, and I'll find it interesting. Because drugs did for me what I could not do for myself. Those promises would come true, and I'd be okay. And then the nightmare would start again, and so gradually the consequences would come, and I'd repeat the cycle that they talk about in that book. So that went on for me for years. I did lots of rehabs, did lots of psych wards, did all that stuff, and so I found myself in 2000 and people always do the dates thing. I'm really bad with that. 2002, 2003, I found myself in Scottsboro. So how that happened was I had manipulated my way out of another rehab by saying that I'd been physically abused by this big guy who was actually a really lovely guy, but my family bought it. They took me out of that rehab. I thought I was going home, but they took me to another rehab I'd been to 3 times in Durban. I smuggled drugs into that rehab. I got caught, and they wouldn't allow me to stay. And my family were phoning around trying to find somewhere for me to go, and everywhere said, no, sorry, he comes here, he causes trouble, we don't, But there's a new place that's opened up down on the south coast, we won't know him, so maybe they'll take him, and he has a number. So I found myself at the house on the hill for the first time. Nowhere really, I was trying to do my time. I had committed to do 6 weeks of rehab, which for me was a stretch, because I like the 21-day thing. And I'd done a few weeks at this other rehab, so I thought I'll just finish the balance of those weeks at this rehab. And my cousin went inside, he spoke to Julia at the time, and came back to the car and said, hey, this place is really cool, you don't have to do your own washing here, and I was like, wow, I'm sold, really. So that began my journey, and I'd like to say that I then came in, I asked, listened, did what I was told, and I committed to the steps, and my life was amazing from then on. But I went in, I asked, I listened, I did what I wanted. I didn't buy in, I read Bill's story, I looked for all the differences, not the similarities. These people are older, I'm younger, alcohol, more drugs, successful, I dropped out of school, married, never married. I just looked for any loophole I could find to not have to A, stop using, B, change, and kind of then the next 2 years for me, I was in and out of that center for 6 or 7 times. But, in hindsight, every time was valuable. To me, I learned through each of those experiences that what they were telling me there was true, because I did not want to buy in. I didn't want to be a part of this. I didn't want to accept that I was an alcoholic because that meant I'd have to do certain things. And so I went through a process of elimination, because I'm an explorer. I'm an experimenter. So they said, don't do this, and I did it, and I relapsed, and I came back. And they said, you need to do this, and I didn't do it, and I relapsed, and I came back. And I was just that guy. I was so oblivious to my behavior, I really thought my using was the problem, substances were my problem. If I just work on that part, everything else will be okay. And so I would, and like I joke about in groups often, I would do the prayer, and I would write all the stuff in the book, and then I'd steal people's things out the fridge, bum cigarettes, do all that stuff that we do, because I didn't link that to my disease. I didn't link that to my behavior was a problem before I used drugs and alcohol, and that ultimately was what led to all the problems in my life. I just had no idea. And so I got up to lots of nonsense, and I was in and out for the next 2 years. And in that period of time, I lost my then 5-year relationship. I lost the relationships with my family. I wasn't welcome on the property because I would steal everything. I destroyed my family's hope. My family got to that point, and I used to manipulate my mother because I knew that she would be the one who would fetch me, always. Because if I phoned her and said, I'm on the streets, I'm living in the boot of my car, I'm hungry, I'm whatever, my mom would cave, And what I would imagine was some advice from the center. Eventually my family said, listen, if you want to go to rehab, that's the one thing we'll help you with. Anything other than that, don't contact us. And I thought they were bluffing, I did. I didn't think they would really stick to that, but they did. And for the next few months, I kind of like, I went through, in the end, I had to come in because I wanted to come in, I guess, is the long and short of it. I came in the last time because I was broken, and I was not just tired of using, I was sick of living the way that I was living. I found myself in that limbo that people talk about where I spent days on end wishing for death, but being too much of a coward to take my own life, and that was it. And I would wake up, use, and I can go through lots of stuff of the madness that I did there, but 14 years is a lot of what happened to share about. So anyway, eventually I came in, and people always ask me, like, how do you know you conceded defeat? I always get that question, like, how did you know this time was different? And if you asked me when I came into treatment the last time, I wouldn't be able to tell you, is the truth. I wouldn't be able to tell you. I'd be able to tell you I was sick of my life. I'd be able to tell you I was tired of the pain. I'd been through even withdrawal so many times I couldn't count. I'd spent most of my time in rehabs and institutions while everyone else had passed me by. And that's kind of where I was at. But what I can say in hindsight was I did what I was told, and that was kind of the common thread for the first year of recovery. I did not step a foot out of place. I got concerned a lot, everything down to even my humor, all the things that caused conflict in my relationships was pointed out to me. It was hectic, but I guess I was just at a place where I was willing to listen, and I was willing to take things on board, and I was willing to try. And so I stopped stealing the scones out the fridge, and I stopped, flirting, and I stopped doing all the stuff that I did previously. Like, somebody said, well, you need to change just everything and how you do it, just do it differently. And that's kind of how it was. And that first year for me was easy, it really was. I committed myself. I had done nothing in my life, and so, I kind of joke about how arrogant I was in my first and second year, because I could tell everybody how they needed to work their program, but I really didn't have any areas of life to work it in the beginning. I had no relationship, no job, no nothing. And so for me, the first year was about make your bed, tidy your room, get up, brush your teeth regularly, go to meetings, do service, and I kind of I think about the things that were said to me, and it was like, go to meet, even when I left treatment, 90 meetings in 90 days, I did 90 meetings in 90 days. Get a service position, I got service position. Sponsor people, I sponsored people right from early on. Don't get into a relationship for the first year of recovery. I didn't get into a relationship for the first year of recovery. And for me, it wasn't even just about the things that I was told to do. It was about my willingness to do those things, because I knew my self-reliance had put me in this chair. And anything anyone else thought collectively was a better idea for me, I was going to go with that, because I knew I could not trust my thinking, And so, my first year, what I can say I achieved in my first year was I studied. For the first time in my life, I achieved something. Like I said, I dropped out of school, and I kind of, I was in treatment for that year. There was no halfway house, and people didn't really know what to do with me anymore. So I don't know if it was kind of on a whim, but Julia said to me the one day, you need to go and do some dive courses up at the dive center, because there's a lot of dive centers. And my initial thing was pretty much like I approach every new thing. Here's 10 reasons why it's not going to be fun for me, okay? Like beach, ocean, don't really like it. Palm trees, not my thing. Beach is quite dirty and sandy, don't dig it. Scuba diving, I've seen people do that. They walk backwards like idiots into the water, carrying all that shit, face scrunched up in that mask. I'm not going to like that either, But I was told you're going to do it. So I went. And I loved it, The first major consistent thing throughout my early years was I dove. I did diving all the time. I did my open waters, my advanced, my rescue divers, my emergency first response, my dive masters, my instructors, my specialty instructors, my EFR instructors. And for me, and I get some people have achieved, and before they wound up here, I didn't. So for me, just that certificate on my dad's wall was a huge achievement for me. I'd never followed through with anything. Don spent many days with me going through physics and physiology and, math and, oh God. Stuff that I didn't believe I was capable of doing, and I guess for me what I took out of that, was don't trust what you think you're going to enjoy, because I love diving, I love scuba diving. You can get me out the water. Secondly, don't underestimate what you can achieve when you're clean and sober and work in this program, because I applied myself, I studied, which I'd never done before, and I passed. And I got qualified, and I did all of that stuff, and I don't dive much today, and I started a little dive business and whatever, but it was massive what I took out of those experiences in that first period of time. Herbert Spencer, contemporary to investigation. I try everything at least once before I diss it, for the most part, even running. So that was kind of the first year. The second year was really where life started for me, and so there I go into the whole thing about the relationship thing. So so my wife, as everyone knows, she also went to treatment at the same place up there. And what I always just like to make very clear, nothing happened there, okay, before you start getting ideas, rehab's a nice place to find a wife. No. She was already out of treatment, and she was in the fellowship, and the next kind of big thing for me, because I think in the second year was where I really started to understand how drugs are not the problem. As my life started to expand and new things started to happen, I started to find out just how alcoholic and mad and incapable at times I can be in just about any area. And doing a relationship sober is hectic, Like I really, it took me, I don't know how long it took me just to pluck up the courage even to phone, that kind of stuff. I'd write down things to say, like questions to ask that would make some kind of small talk so that I wouldn't end up blank and looking like an idiot. Because I didn't know how to do any of this stuff clean, Anyway, so I phoned my sponsor up the one day and I said, listen, so Natalie? And he's like, yeah, of course. And I said, well, I was thinking of asking her out on a date, Felt weird even saying that. And he's like, no, she's not been around long enough. She needs to, She needs to work on herself. You need to work on you. Not the right thing. Blah blah blah. I was like, okay, fine. So I didn't. I waited. And a while later, I think I phoned you again. And he said no. And I waited. And then I phoned again, and eventually he said, yeah, okay, she's been around some time. She's doing well. Maybe it's okay. So let's see. So after all this shit of, things to say and how to do this, I phone her up. I say, would you like to go out for coffee, I think it was. And she says, yeah, sure, I'd love to, but I need to ask my sponsor. And so she phoned her sponsor, Julia, who said no. And so we waited, and like, I guess, why I bring that up is just the thing that's been consistent for me throughout my recovery is like, I'm an alcoholic. I found a suggestion. I don't trust me, and I know I always have an agenda in something, and I always check things out, and if my sponsor thinks it's a bad idea, then I don't do it, And that's how I treated pretty much everything. And anyway, so once we kind of, we started dating again, I found out just how I had not learned to work a program in this area. This was a new area, clean and sober. And I found I was just as alcoholic as I was in any area before. Because I thought, now that I've gained this momentum of being a spiritual guru, through my first year, I'm going to deal with a relationship like Terry Gorski would, like I'll be like hundreds on the level. But I was obsessed, and I was self-obsessed, and I was nervous, and I was shy, and I was, jealous, and I was all kinds of stuff. And I think that's probably where we started to get really close, because I was on the phone all the time. This is what I'm thinking. You're mad. Okay, cool. This is what I'm thinking. And, but we worked through that. And obviously, as you know, things turned out okay. So for me, like there's just, from there, what's happened over the years is, I love this share by a guy called Earl H. who talks about luxury problems, and I was talking about it on Thursday at the meeting as well. Like today I have problems in areas I never had areas, like my life, I destroyed it to a point where there was really nothing in my life. And what I'm grateful for is that recovery, and in God's wisdom, He's given me things slowly over a period of time. It's come back, and it's come into my life because I've really needed to learn to apply these principles in each new area of my life, and then there's growth. And I'm not saying I'm always perfect at it, and sometimes I make mistakes to learn the growth. But that's what it's been about. I got into, I don't know, see, a lot's happened. It's hard to put this into 45 minutes. But so eventually we got married, which, by the way, was kind of like my first real arrived in recovery. Like a lot of amazing things happened. I'd made a lot of my amends. My relationships with my family had grown. But what really stood out to me was my wedding. Because before I came into Alcoholics Anonymous, I spent most of my time alone. People had gone. Even my dodgy friends felt I was too dodgy and had left. So I spent months, hours, days alone in solitude, using, stealing, scoring, using, being in a facility, being out, and that was kind of. And when we had our wedding, we actually had to really limit the amount of people we could invite who wanted to be a part of our lives at the wedding, which really stood out to me, because if it had been a few years before that, there would be no one there, and I remember being at our wedding, and we're not religious, and so we decided we wanted to do our wedding our way, maybe a bit alcoholic, but anyway, and so I had asked my sponsor, I asked Don, because he was kind of our spiritual advisor. I said, will you do the ceremony, which was another amazing thing. And at our wedding, the majority of the people there were in the fellowship. It was only my family and a few other people who were there who were drinking. But the main theme at my wedding was about this. We read from the big book. People were sharing. People, MCs were all friends in recovery. My best man was my best friend in recovery, who'd been a close friend from treatment and all the way through. My sponsor did the ceremony. My wife was in recovery. It was amazing, really amazing. And I remember standing there that day and just thinking, wow, like, how have I come from that to this? Standing up here with all these people as a part of our life, and with this beautiful woman, and that doesn't happen to people like me. The vast majority of the things I'm going to tell you about, they don't happen to people like me. Where I belong is dead, and that in reality it would be my reality if it wasn't for this program. The only sad thing about my wedding was, obviously Julia wasn't there. So that, worst moment in recovery was Julia's death. I kind of my family had been my family my whole life, but my recovery family have really been my family. And I don't mean that in any ugly kind of way. Between Keith, Don, and Julia, they raised me, in essence. I really did not know how to do anything when I arrived here. Nothing. I was completely incapable and useless, and every step of the way, these are the people who brought me up. And Julia was my wife's sponsor. She was like a mom to me. We did diving together. She was passionate about that too. She probably gave me the most of my reality when I was in treatment. She had a gift, She could give you a reality in a way that you actually felt good about it and would thank her for it. I'm still trying to achieve that. I don't know if it's really possible. But anyway, she died through the consequences of her addiction, long term. She had a few relapses along the way as well. I don't know. I guess I know what that's about, but she was there for me, and I wouldn't be sitting here today if it wasn't for her, and I'm really grateful for that. So that was the one sad part of the wedding, and probably the hardest thing I've had to get through in recovery. Moving on from there, kids, got pregnant, well, not me. That was like a horrible beginning to an amazing ending, I guess. I didn't deal with that well. Kind of part of my story is that was a period of my recovery where I was not okay. Call it fear, call it other issues, not working my program, had a lot of resentments. I went through a lot of stuff through that period. I also became addicted to a computer game. You laugh, but it's not really funny. I'd be playing a computer game more than I was sitting with my wife, who was going through the pregnancy of our daughter, first child. Didn't know how to deal with that stuff. I mean, she went through a lot of pain through that episode. I had to go through a lot of stuff and work my steps again through that episode. That culminated and ended in a lot of other stuff. I guess I'll get to. But to the point where my daughter was born, because again, I don't know how to do life. And again, sitting there, this person who had come into these rooms desperate and alone with nothing and incapable, to sitting there with my wife, this little girl staring up at me while her eyes were closed, so that's not really true. But, bathing my daughter for the first time, that hasn't really even sunk in. I say I'm a dad, I say that's my daughter, that hasn't even really sunk in, that I'm a father, in recovery, that I'm a dad, I'm a father, and that I'm responsible for the lives of these two children, which is scary if you think about it, and where I come from. And yet, how mind-blowing, I joke about kind of where that ended up, and I had some resentments with this nemesis that I used to work with, and that stuff, and this stuff, and blah, 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 blah. Anyway, I got so nuts, I thought my wife was having an affair. That's a long story, mad story that started with just, and once again, cunning, baffling, and powerful. Denial, it's not limited to active, like me as an alcoholic. What I find when I'm not working this program, I'll believe anything, and it'll spark with some little event, and I'll have some belief about that event. When I'm not okay, I'll believe it's real, and then I'll live accordingly. And resentment's a good example for me of that, and what this program has taught me. Warps my perception of reality. So much to the point, and I don't have time to get into this story. It's a good, funny story, though. But eventually I'm checking her phone, I'm watching what she's doing, because this guy had made a comment, and this is where it sparked off. And, and then there was stuff because I was mad. So obviously there was distance in the relationship. I thought it was because she's seeing someone else, and whatever. So eventually I read her Step 11s, because she always works a solid program. Which is a bit of a contradiction, because she wouldn't cheat on me if she was working a solid program. But hey, I was mad. So I picked up her Step 11. I'm reading for the evidence, of this relationship. Mad. Anyway, I didn't find anything, I didn't find any facts or any truth or any reality, and that ended up in kind of like her confronting me and me having to work with my sponsor and work my steps and look at what's going on. And I guess why I share this story is just how amazing, because, like someone always says, this program solves all my problems, not just about drugs and alcohol. I worked those steps, I inventoried my stuff, I put pen to paper, I did a step 5 with my sponsor, and I popped right out the other side and could see the madness, in how those steps, they just deal with that part of me that's insane. And for some reason, when I'm doing this and when I'm working, I apply those principles, and I just go through that simple, in the order that they're written. Anything that I've gone through in recovery, I've been able to work through, see the madness, deal with the resentments, the fears, the guilt, make the amends, do whatever I have to do, and pop out of it relatively quickly on the other side. And I've done that a few times in recovery, where I've applied this program to whatever's going on for me, and found A, relief, and B, the sanity and the solutions that I need to. I don't know if I've shared that adequately. But anyway, another thing for me, my profession, I despise rehab. I relate when you guys come in and you're like, fuck, I'm in rehab. Like, I get it, I do. I spent so much time in rehab, I despise rehab. If you had said you're going to work in a rehab, I would have punched you in the face. The best part of rehab for me was driving out of the rehab. And yet I found that when I went back to my other profession, it was all based in stuff that wasn't really about me, and I wasn't really interested, and I was not fulfilled doing that work. And what I thought I would always do with my life, the only skill that I believed I had, actually didn't work out. And so I started volunteering up at the center, and I found I loved that. I would come up on the weekends, I'd take people to dinner, because the house was a lot smaller then, and we'd go to a meeting, and then I'd spend the weekend, and then I'd go back and work. And I found that my best moments, the times that I was really happy, inspired, and alive, was when I was there. And that started to lead me to thinking, well, maybe I need to change jobs, And so, I don't know how long it was after that, I was offered a position to come and train, and then I did. And that has been one of the highlights of my life. I love working there. I feel sorry for people who put on a shirt and tie and go and sit behind a desk for some odd reason to make money every day, and that's all they do. Because I get to be a part of this all day, every day, and watch people get better, and I wouldn't change anything. And I love rehab now. It's mad. It also led to me doing a lot of other things I didn't believe I would ever do or be capable of. I studied. I did courses. I got certified as an addictions counselor. I got certified as a clinical supervisor, which led me to starting the college that I run. I run a business. I run a successful business. That I started myself, that I had no funding from my parents or any of that kind of stuff, that I did all the dirty work myself. I created my own websites. I did all the documentation. I compiled the coursework from stuff that I had and that I studied, and that took off, and I'm a part of that. I have other people doing most of the work now. So, I don't know, everything that I've kind of set out to achieve in recovery, I have to say I've achieved. I'm content with my life. There's really nothing left. Everything that I thought I wouldn't be capable of, or I wasn't good enough for, or I would never have a relationship, or I'd never be able to be a parent, I do those things today, So, so much. Okay, so, the last 2 years have been difficult. Like I said, problems in areas I didn't have areas before, and, I've gone through all kinds of things like financial insecurity. Business is good when it's good, sometimes it's not. Sometimes there's some spanners in the works. I've had fights with other organizations. I've had all kinds of stuff like that go along. And I've gone through periods where really the best I could do was show up. Kind of like the lesson of last year for me was, and we were talking about it this last week at a meeting, it's really easy to work a program when things are going your way, and I would say for the most part of my recovery, things have gone my way. I really have. A very, very small portion of my recovery has been difficult. When it's been difficult, it's been really difficult. And the biggest thing that I've gotten out of it, and I guess the test for me, because there's that part of me that will still go, well, when things are not going my way, then why should I be spiritual, Why should I get out of myself and help somebody else? Why should I go and share? Why should I do all those things? That's the alcoholic in me that says those things, And I suppose what I take out of conceding defeat is that regardless of the difficult times and the things that have gone on, I still show up. I go to meetings sometimes when I'm not even sure what's going on for me. I share with people, I work with my sponsor, and that has never wavered. I've never stopped going to meetings. I've never stopped talking to my sponsor. That has always got me through, and touch wood. I hope it stays that way. I believe it will, one day at a time. So I just kind of whenever I end my share, because this promises for me are really the bait. I don't know why the sister fellowship took that out. I think it's ridiculous in my arrogance. I would make it better. But those promises for me are why I stayed. I wanted the using to stop. That was good. I wanted the obsession and compulsion to leave me because I had that every day. And I didn't believe it would be possible to live more than a couple of days without having the obsession and compulsion to pick up. But that has been the smallest bonus product of recovery for me. I'm not here because of that. I would have got bored somewhere along the line because I'm an alcoholic. I'm into extraordinary. I'm not into mediocre. I don't do mediocre. I never have. My recovery's been nothing near mediocre. Those promises are why I stayed, and why I continue to work this program, because I don't want to be clean and sober unhappy. I want to be clean and sober fulfilled. I want to be clean and sober enjoying my life, being passionate, having a purpose, having direction, feeling part of, being able to experience all the things that my active alcoholism robbed me of, like traveling, studying, working, relationships, children, all those things that for me wouldn't be possible without this. And so what I always try to impart into people, and I guess I spoke about it when we did the cake up at the house, is, you have no idea what's in store for you. You have no idea. You are required to follow a few simple rules. You are. It's not free. There's change required. There's action required. There's a lot of times that it might seem difficult and like you're not going to get out the other side, and you'll have to do it anyway. And when you get out the other side, you find out why, you find the lessons, you see the growth, and you move on to the next thing. And that, for me, is what recovery is about. And I wake up today, I wake up alcoholic, okay? But, when I look at my life today, I wake up with 6 little brown eyes staring at me, I'd like to say I'm very friendly, but I'm not at that point in the morning. But the fact is, I have those 6 sets of brown eyes, 3 sets. My wife, my son, and my daughter, and I wake up every morning in a home with a family, with a roof over my head, living my life, going to a job that I love, that I'm passionate about, surrounded by fellowship, by friends, my family. I get on with everyone in my family. That's not always going to be the case. I guess I'm kind of lucky. There's no one in my family I have a bad relationship with. And that's kind of, that's the gift. It's not about just being sober. It's about being sober and having a life. That has made me want to be here. That has made me keep coming here. That makes me keep trying, no matter what life throws at me. And I hope and pray that you'll all get to experience the same. So, thanks for letting me share.